Okay, good morning everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're in the world, and welcome to our webinar. The topic today is the future of accounts payable, 5 key priorities for 2018. My name is Michael Cullen, I'm VP of Marketing here at SoftCo, and I'd also like to introduce you to my co-host here today, Garret Pearse, Senior B2B Consultant at SoftCo. Garret has over 20 years experience in best practice AP and P2P processes and implementing those processes and automating processes in large organizations, and has most recently worked with large organizations like Primark, PwC and Renault. So welcome, Garret.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me, Mike.
And thank you for giving up your time today, and I look forward to picking your brain on some of these topics. Just some housekeeping while we think of it. If you do want to ask a question during the webinar, there's a panel on the right-hand side for comments, and if the panel is getting in the way of your presentation, you can just minimize that with the orange arrow button. So without further ado, we'll kick on. We don't want to keep you more than the half an hour schedule, so we'll try and keep it short and sweet and hopefully interesting for you guys attending. And if you do have any questions, as I said, please feel free. We'll make time at the end for those. We have a very simple agenda. The first thing we're going to talk about is the current state of accounts payable. What we mean by that really is the trends that we're seeing impacting accounts payable and the accounts payable function globally in the last year and moving into next year. And then we'll move on to the key priorities into next year in 2018. You know, what best practice AP functions are focusing on for the year ahead. As I said, we'll have questions and answers, and we'll let you pick Garrett's brain if there's anything left of it after I'm finished. And as I said, we'll keep it within the 30 minutes. Does that sound okay, Garrett?
Yeah, sounds great.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll move on. First off, so as I said, the current state of accounts payable. We'll quickly talk about 3 of the most prevalent trends that are shaping AP right now, and that will inform then, you know, what priorities really will be focused on in 2018 and what they should be. The first, I guess, the first kind of trend, or the first thing we'll look through is the top challenges in the AP process that AP people are reporting, and this is as a result of industry research provided by Paystream Advisors. I guess the 3 data points that stand out the most are these ones here. So the manual routing of invoices for approval is something that all AP people will be familiar with. Manual data entry and inefficient processes. Again, you know, as we're coming up to year end, it's something that a lot of AP functions will still struggle with. And then, you know, the majority of invoices being received in paper format. I guess these are, you know, 3 trends that are so prevalent. But is it still consistent, Garret, in 2017 coming into 2018? Is this what we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully there's been a significant decrease. Looking at your last point there in the number received via paper, but it still is an issue for departments. You still get some suppliers who can't do that. And the manual routing of invoices where people organizations haven't been able to put some automation in around there. They're still relying on the likes of email, Outlook, sending emails via Outlook to get approval or coding, and trying to track it through that in a combination of spreadsheets. So yes, it's still a quarter of organizations still have that problem. And then with actually capturing the data from those invoices, be they received via email or paper, is capturing the data off it. It's still a significant challenge and a significant amount of work for AP departments having to capture that. Obviously, there's a lot of organizations have been able to maybe tame one or 2 of those items, but there's still issues that impact on departments. And what it then relates to is it creates control and visibility nightmares. If you're receiving it in paper, if you're having to rely on non-structured routing processes like email inboxes in Excel, it can be very difficult or very slow to compile visibility at the end of the month, what's outstanding, what's the way out.
Sure. And is it a case as well that even when, you know, invoices are being received by email, that they're being printed and then the paper problem is just being duplicated? So
yeah, it's a good point. You still have that. I still go into good number of AP departments that are still, they may get it via email, but they're still relying on paper to actually process it. They're printing it off. I've gone into some horror scenarios where whole forests are being killed by people printing off the invoice on the way in. They scan it in, send it off to somebody who then prints it out, adds coding to it, scans it back in. I was with one customer in the north of England who shall remain nameless, but they were creating 8 or 9 copies of paper copies of an invoice that had come in by email. So even though the supplier was being diligent and environmentally friendly, it was still creating a lot of paper on both sides. So
we're not sure who's been harmed more, the accounts payable department or the environment.
That's what we're looking to solve.
Very good, very good. Okay, so moving on from that, another trend that I guess has continued into 2017 and will continue well beyond next year and the year after is that shift towards a centralized shared service center type model in the accounts payable environment. So, centralizing all invoices in the receipt of all invoices into one location. We can see from this that it's only kind of half or slightly over half of organizations that are fully centralized, and a lot remain to be centralized. So, what do you think will drive the shift further towards centralization, and what are the benefits to be achieved by centralizing the AP function?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. A lot of organizations, particularly with multiple locations or with diverse large facilities, still struggle with that. Invoices are still coming in. The first port of call and invoices directly to the person who raised the requirement, and so they're coming in before AP even get to see it. Okay. In many cases, they can be stuck in drawers, they can be stuck in email inboxes before they get passed on to AP. The person who's receiving them does have some task to do, whether it's confirmation of OK to pay or adding coding. So there's a bit of a change in approach required, and get people to break that habit, get the supplier. You want to centralize, get those invoices coming in centrally and give AP visibility of it. First, not last. Okay. They have to take that leap to realize that ultimately there's benefits to be gained from doing it that way.
Okay, and what do you think is the blocker there? Is it that AP are pushing back and saying, no, we want the invoice coded before it gets to us, or is it the people out in the business saying, well, we want to see it before it goes anywhere near AP, or what's the...
It can be a bit of both. It can be the feeling that it has to go to the business first, for that coding can be the perceived blocker. But I think what I've seen is that if you do get it central, you're gaining opportunities for things like maybe being able to automatically code, do some of the work that people out in the offices are having to do. You immediately give AP visibility and control. You're immediately able to make sure it still goes to the right person if need be, but you might be able to call out a lot of that manually, either shuffling a paper around or emails around, whatever it may be. And even where it does need to go to the person, at least it's going to the person, ideally in an automated situation, but where AP has full visibility.
And AP know how long it's sitting with them and the value and the accruals and all that kind of stuff is up to date. So
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense. Okay, perfect. And then I guess, regardless of whether it's a centralized or decentralized environment, the next kind of trend holds true in both cases, and that's the kind of typically a lack of a coherent, integrated process between procurement, AP, and payments. The research has shown us that only 19% of organizations have a completely integrated kind of process flow from procure to pay. So I guess what I'd like to understand there is what's the impact of that on the organization, and then what's causing it, and what's the impact on the organization, and what can we do to kind of alleviate that?
Yeah, I mean what you're describing there is where you have organizations where they maybe have a separate stock and procurement system to what they're ultimately booking the invoices into, and they're trying to coordinate that, or indeed they may have, in some cases they may have an ERP which does most or all of that from an accounting point of view, recording point of view, but where it falls down is in the process management, the workflow processing of the approvals of the requisitions, or the approvals of the invoice, or exception handling of the invoices. That can be the challenge that organizations are struggling with. I know everything. The ERP is a very reliable tool of reporting what's happened, but to get to that point where I can reliably do my matching or handle my exceptions is the problem. And it can start because you've got organizations that are maybe production driven, so the power is coming from the manufacturing and production side, and finance is kind of a secondary consideration when a system is put in. And then also it can be to do some of the automation that will give you benefit. To do that directly in the ERP can be a very expensive or time consuming operation. So people have shied out when they look at the cost, they kind of take a step back and go, might not want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So your big kind of unwieldy large ERP systems can be difficult to get all those things done cost effectively and in a time that's not totally crazy.
Right, exactly. It's going to be hard to get people going. You're going to be looking to get more people going in and using them, or doing a very expensive rollout and expensive acquisition of such a process.
And is there often separate management across the functions? So separate management across AP and procurement, for example, that they're not singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can have very often it's like I said, in a production and manufacturing environment that's managed by one arm of the business, if you like, and that the finance oversees just the handling of the financial transactions that you need. Somebody with the vision and authority to kind of take a step back and look at the overall process. And
so giving ownership of P2P to an individual.
And having the drive and being able to push it through. Sometimes you need to shake a couple of trees just to get everybody following the same improvement path.
Try people kicking and screaming.
Well, hopefully it never gets to that.
Absolutely.
But they'll typically see the benefits once it's laid out properly.
Okay, very good. Well, look, I think we've kind of set the scene there as to the trends, and these will be no surprise to lots of people in terms of the trends we're discussing. They've continued for a number of years and will continue going forward. But these kind of I guess kind of inform the key priorities for accounts payable in 2018, taking these into account. So what we're going to look at now are the 5 key priorities and what should best practice AP leaders be focusing on in 2018 to improve their processes and the overall performance of the function. So the first thing again is something that's been on the radar for a very long time and is improving in terms of how we go about it, and that's process automation. What we're seeing here is the benefits achieved through process automation. So, we're seeing that 72% of organizations achieve quicker approval of invoices, 57% of organizations achieve increased employee productivity, and 46% see lower processing costs. So, Garret, maybe you can take us through what exactly we mean by process automation. And one thing actually jumping out at me there is the 46%. I think surely if we're doing process automation correctly, 100% of organizations should be achieving lower processing costs, right?
Yeah, it's not always 100%. There may be some who are, but certainly that's 46%. I think if you're doing it right, it should be higher. You should be more than 46% are getting it, absolutely. And just to talk through each of those points that you've brought up there, I suppose by process automation, there's a number of different areas where we can look to automate it. Most obvious one is the upfront capture of those invoices that are coming in. Tools and outsource options out there, so you can use the OCR tools to capture the data, capture it from the email or however it's received, get the data from that, so you're avoiding the creation of paper, you're removing a lot of the keying overhead, which is non-value add activity by your AP staff. You want them doing more productive stuff, so there's capture options there to be done.
Sure.
Then to try and automate, once you've got the data, that in itself is great, but you then need to figure out what do I have here? What matches? What doesn't match?
Yeah.
So there's opportunities there to try and automate as much of that of the the matching of those invoices. Where there's exceptions, you want to make sure that they get routed to the right people who can resolve them as quickly as possible. One key thing to look for, just an important distinction between the capture and matches. Capturing the data doesn't lead to it helps you identify what you've got, but you're still going to have a process to solve that.
Gotcha.
Solve what you've got if there's issues with it, whether it be even if it has come in by email.
So OCR may not be the godsend solution for everything. It's a great start.
It's a great start, but you still have to figure out once you've got the data what doesn't match, doesn't need approval. So you need tools to help you route it around for approval. And then integration, you want to get obviously that data into whatever your target system of record is, be it an ERP or a standard finance system. And pulling all that together is the ability to report on that, see what I've got, where it's at, what's wrong with it, why is it wrong with it, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But that automation is going to bring those benefits you talked about, and also not just to your AP department, but I was talking to a client recently who has a number of operations managers throughout its locations. We're spending up to half a day manually processing paper invoices that have been sent into company post, so that you can drive productivity improvements throughout the organization. When you scratch beneath the surface, you find a lot of people are spending a lot of time that they needn't be.
Okay, so it's not just productivity in the AP department necessarily, or out in the business.
Absolutely.
We're spending a lot of time and effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. The next thing we're going to look at here is mobile accessibility, and we're seeing this coming more to the fore. As I guess number one, we're spending more time on mobile devices, and people expect to be able to complete tasks that they would complete in their own personal life as a consumer on a mobile device in their business life as well. So, you might think, how could we possibly spend even more time on our mobile devices than we already are? So, saying we're spending 2 hours and 51 minutes every day on a smartphone, and that's still due to grow 39 times. Mobile traffic in general is due to grow 39 times its current volume by 2021. And what kind of the research is saying is that a lot of this is going to be driven by business-related tasks. And AP included. So if you're doing instant messaging on WhatsApp or Skype or whatever it is, or Facebook Messenger in your personal life, you expect to have that functionality in business as well, or video conferencing or whatever it might be. So and that extends to AP, where we expect to be able to complete tasks on our mobile devices, be that raise a requisition, approve an invoice, or complete a goods receipt. So I guess the mobile trend is kind of driving its way into the business world from the consumer world. But I guess how's that going to impact the AP, Garret? You think, and how AP is operating?
Well, yeah, I mean the main benefits of mobile are to the users, that the AP's business users out in the business, it's AP's internal customers, if you like, making it as removing all the barriers for them to be able to interact with AP. So that takes the form of mobile devices used for the goods receiving. That you can have guys standing out in the delivery bays recording what's been received instead of having to go back to a PC station and enter what's been received. Improvements like that. To where you're having either requisition approval or invoice approval, making it as easy and as convenient as possible for your key approvers to be able to sign off. I've recently worked with a large food and beverage organization where the CEO was still insisting that everything be printed off and put on his desk for sign off.
Okay.
We did eventually get him around through making it easy where he can do sign-offs within this particular scenario. We'll be able to sign off through email, clicking a button in his email. Eventually said, okay, I've got all the information there. I no longer need that printout.
Okay.
So there's options there. But what that meant was it took a lot of the task out of processing that invoice. It sped it up significantly and gave him a sense of control and being more productive. It took him a lot less time once he realized the benefits to it. He felt more comfortable, and within a few weeks, it said to me that I can't imagine going back.
Wow.
So it's those kind of things.
Old dogs can learn new tricks.
Exactly. It turns out he could, and it's removing those barriers, making it as easy, making it difficult for your people at the business to say, no, I won't provide that information for you, or it's going to take me a while to get to it. You make it as easy and as seamless as them.
Sure. Remove all the excuses.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Perfect. Okay. I guess on that we'll move on to number 3, and that is supplier management. And again, supplier management is an area that is becoming more prevalent, and we're looking towards the supply chain to find more efficiencies and synergies in the process. And I guess the first stat we're seeing here is improving supplier relationships, and that's a goal for 17% of the people surveyed. Now, maybe we're not so keen on supplier relationships, or we don't feel that that's a huge priority. But one that obviously that does stick out there is reducing risk and improving compliance, and then there's increasing the supply chain efficiency, as I said. So it seems to be similar to the accounts payable process, moving back into the supply chain. Efficiency seems to be still the main goal. So I'm just wondering then, how should we go about improving supply chain efficiency, Garret? How's that?
So what I suppose the bits that I saw made sense. The way to approach it was, first of all, identify who your preferred suppliers are. And it may sound obvious, but very often when you look at your supplier database, you'll find there's a lot of excess in there. There's a lot of companies still in there that you deal with once or twice or haven't dealt with in years. So first of all, focus down to the ones you really care about, the ones that are critical to your business, both in terms of the goods they provide or the service they provide, and make a point of working closely with them. Devote the time to the old 80-20
Yeah.
rule, that identify that 20% of suppliers who probably make up 80% of your spend.
Sure.
Devote time to working with them to improve processes. There are the things you can do in terms of how you interact with them from purchasing and invoicing points away that will make it easier for you and easier for them. It will make them keener to work with you and drive their efficiencies as well as yours. That's a very good place to be getting to.
Sure.
And where you do have to bring on new suppliers, just with the online forms and online tools available now, you can make that a much more seamless process as well. Because very often bringing on new suppliers can be critical to your business, particularly in fast-moving retail or fast-moving selling to business. You want to be able to get your new supplies from your new suppliers as quickly as possible.
Sure.
Not be held up by a paper form.
Yeah, sending a Word document by email out to suppliers.
Exactly. That still happens. When you ask a lot of companies, it tends to be the poor relation when it comes to the overall procurement and AP process is getting those suppliers on board and getting the data. Setting them up for success, if you like, making it easy from the start for them to deal with you and you to deal with them.
Sure. We'd never let customers have such a poor onboarding process, but we
very good.
Allow it for suppliers.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But suppliers, it tends to be a slightly different attitude, but I think because it's a mutually beneficial relationship, there's huge gains, there's a huge opportunity there for improvement there.
Sure. And in terms of then the supplier self-management side of things, so the in-life kind of keeping the supplier data up to date and
I mean, that could be a real challenge in many scenarios. Who do I go to when I need to change my address or change my bank payment details? Using something like a supplier portal that lets the supplier do that management themselves, and we'll put controls around it. We're going to talk a bit more about it in a minute. Yeah. But there is a real opportunity there to cut down on paperwork and administration for your organisation, but also help your supplier help you.
Sure. And that leads us nicely into, I think, the next point, which is around data management and data protection. And you know what the statistics we're looking at here are the pains that cause the most damage to supplier relationships. Obviously, you know, late payments is something that, you know, suppliers absolutely hate, and it's awful for their cash flow. But then again, that probably goes back more to the AP practice automation, the cycle time reduction that we talked about earlier in terms of reducing the time to approve invoices. But the key one here, and the 31% on the far right, is, you know, the problems that arise from poor supplier data management, as we touched on just now. So, you know, how do we address those problems that arise from, what are the problems that arise from poor data management and supplier data, and then how do we address that?
Yeah. Well, some of it comes back to the previous point around standard data changes. It can be an arduous process, but there's another more worrying aspect to it, which is the risk for fraud or error, the incorrect payments. So we're looking at now in setting up processes to manage that whole changing of supplier data and management of supplier data, having where a supplier issues a notification of a change of address or a change of bank details, that it goes through a proper process to make sure there's no fraudulent nature. You have all the backup documentation for it, where you're onboarding a supplier, that all the appropriate checks are done. So at the end of that supplier being set up, if you have an internal audit or an external audit, you know that you've done your anti-money laundering, your anti-bribery and corruption checks. Everything is ticked off, and you're not relying on trying to find some piece of paper buried deep in somebody's inbox, if indeed that is, it is there somewhere.
Okay, very good. And then I guess moving on from that whole kind of supplier side of things, and back in-house, where one of the key priorities always for any finance function and AP function is reporting and visibility. Some of the PwC research has shown us that 56% of the respondents still use spreadsheets and manual process to track KPIs. I think, you know, we see a lot of that still, for sure, and it's obviously makes kind of real-time visibility or real-time reporting impossible if you have multiple sources and manual sources for that data. And then as a result of that, 45% of controllers are still identifying lack of visibility into invoices and payables information as their top challenge currently. So I guess it's it's coming to year end, and these are kind of the things that will keep finance managers up at night, and how they're going to get year end done. So, you know, how do we improve that visibility and reporting coming into next year, and make sure we don't end up in a mess again the following year?
Yeah, it's finance departments or accounts payable departments can be pretty frantic, frenetic places at the end of the month as everybody's trying to get this report or this spreadsheet from
someone. We're freaking people out. They're going to start logging off.
Yeah, but there is a better way. There is, and I think the points we talked about beforehand will lead to an easier life that those finance managers and get home on time at month end. That if you're getting your process automation in place, if you're getting your structures and integration points in place and your supplier management in place, what you'll find is you're capturing a lot of the data, ideally in a single platform or in a platform that can pull data from other areas in one go. That the accrual should no longer be a case of merging multiple spreadsheets together. It should be you've got the data, you know your current state of play. It should be click of a button, so you're immediately confident that on the last day of the month end closing that you can click a button and get the data you need for your reports.
Sure. Then I guess this operational side of things and
again, and that can be coming towards the month end. Who has invoices outstanding that I need to chase? Who has what's my current aged debtors report? All of that should be at the click of a button. Now that you've been gathering data throughout.
Your name and shame reports.
Your name and shame, and you tend to know who they are, but it's good to be able to put out a report with people's names on it and get them to finally do something about those invoices they've been promising to approve for the month.
Absolutely.
But and then you can start to look at how different areas of the organisation are doing. How is the AP department doing in terms of invoice throughput? Often be able to prove that, you know what, the reason invoices aren't being processed quickly in this organisation isn't because of AP. AP are doing their job. You now have visibility of the fact that it's taking such and such a person in such and such a department that long to resolve the invoices.
Sure.
That can be a very key tool to the AP manager to be able to say, this is where the problem is. It's never been us. We're always the one picking up the pieces. But here's proof that it's Joe in marketing, not wanting to name names, but it's causing the problem. Or
it's always a marketing guy who gets the blame.
Sorry, Mike, you always get the blame.
That's okay. We probably are at fault most of the time. Too busy being creative to look after POs and invoices, right?
I forgive you for that.
Look, what we'll do maybe is just sum up in terms of what we've covered and the goals of each and what we should be prioritizing for next year, and then we'll take some questions.
Okay, so I mean, we talked around the approval process automation. I think most AP people will be comfortable with that. If there is, they'll typically have a sense where there's opportunities to automate, and again, that's something that a quick conversation will usually confirm. Obviously, mobile is there and getting broader in its use throughout the whole P2P process. Supplier management and the overall data management is something that now it deserves time and it's worth spending the time on.
Sure.
And then, as I said, that all feeds into the overall desire for reporting, visibility, control, and the controls that gives.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll just maybe take one or two questions then, Garret, as we were right up against time. You have one question there.
Actually a question there regarding, we've got large volume, very manual process, but not where do we start, what would be the first thing you would implement? And I think there's not necessarily a first thing to implement, but I think what you'll tend to find is when you have a very large volume, it tends to be, rather than try to change everything overnight, we talked about automating capture, automating matching, automating approval. That may be too big a chunk to bite off in one go, but there is approaches you can take depending on your specifics to maybe look at getting automating something as some kind of simple routing workflow to automate that piece, and that will allow you the time to take a step back and start to look at maybe I can improve my capture process next. Maybe I can start to bring in some automation around matching, whereas trying to do all three at once. I've worked with some organizations who've tried it, failed, and been wary of taking that leap again, and the way we've got around that is by taking them slowly, phase by phase, through rolling out different versions. And they get there, you get there in the end, but without that leap of faith and the risk that can bring, that can have significant risk if it's not done correctly, or if there's just not the bandwidth in the organization to manage it properly.
So step by step.
Step by step, exactly. Small steps, you'll still get there.
Sure, perfect. Okay, well look, we're just right up against time, so First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who logged in today to attend. I hope you found it interesting and useful. And thanks again to Garret for giving up his time. He's a very busy man, so much appreciated, Garret, for sharing your insights with us today. And I guess if anybody wants to follow up or ask about anything in further detail, or has any questions around the AP processes, our contact details are there on screen, or you can contact us at SoftCo.com as well. So we hope to speak to you again soon, and best of luck in everything accounts payable in 2018.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.